Okay, so pizza is an outlier in the series. Not the first food that comes to mind when you think healthy. And the crust is bread, a yeast bread, which I said last time would not be part of this series. There isn't a recipe per se. You just put a bunch of toppings on a big disc of bread dough, but then you do bake it. The main purpose of including pizza in this healthy baking series is to show how easy it is to make your own pizza. You control the ingredients, so you know exactly what's in it, so it can be healthy. How healthy it is depends a lot on what toppings you put on it. I'll demonstrate 2 ways to make the dough, and 2 ways to form the dough, and 2 ways to bake the pizza. Different strokes for different folks. Pizza crust is traditionally made from high-protein, finely ground, double-aught white flour. You can make your pizza with that for a more authentic crust, although double-aught pizza flour is typically not available in grocery stores. You can get it from Amazon and specialty suppliers. You need a high-protein flour to get the stretch. You can also use bread flour, which is a high-protein flour made from hard wheat, but it will not be as finely ground. I make my pizza dough from half whole wheat flour and half bread flour. For the 12-inch pizza I make, I use roughly 330 grams of flour to 210 grams of water, plus a teaspoon of yeast, activated and proofed in hot water, about 110 degrees Fahrenheit, with a little sugar to feed the yeast, plus a tablespoon or 2 of olive oil. Because the ground husks in whole wheat flour have tiny sharp edges that tend to puncture the carbon dioxide bubbles produced by the yeast and therefore deflate the rise, I have started soaking the whole wheat flour in the expected amount of water for about 12 hours to soften those edges before adding the bread flour. You can mix and knead the dough in a food processor, a couple of minutes, which assumes you know the exact ratio of flour to water. Finish off by hand to get a nice ball. A perhaps more satisfactory way to mix and knead the dough is with a mixer that has an attachment or dough hook for kneading. Knead the dough until it's smooth and elastic, about 10 minutes. After the dough is kneaded, let it rise for about 60 minutes, or overnight in the refrigerator, before forming it into the disc. After your dough has risen, it will be rested. That is, it can be stretched out into a circular disc, or any shape you'd like, without springing back. Before you move the dough to your work surface, you need to cover the counter with something that keeps it from sticking. Plain flour is often used, or sometimes cornmeal. I use a half and half mixture of whole wheat flour and coarse ground semolina flour. Semolina flour is most often used to make pasta. The people who make pizza for a living stretch out the pizza dough with their hands, working their way around the outside of the dough in one motion, stretching and turning the dough. Work the outside, not the middle, which can easily become too thin. Leave the outside rim a little thicker. It just takes a little practice to achieve a uniform thickness. Alternatively, you can use a rolling pin, which is an easy way to ensure the dough will be even. Either way works. Chain pizza restaurants often bake their pies in pans on a conveyor belt that runs through a long oven. Traditional pizzerias tend to bake in high-temperature pizza ovens, cooking the pizzas directly on the stone bottoms. If you're going to bake in a pan, then you first move the dough into the pan and then add the toppings. If you are using a stone, you can add the toppings while the dough is still on the counter, or add them after sliding the peel under the dough. Before adding the toppings, test that your dough has sufficient flour or cornmeal underneath to keep it from sticking. It's going to have to slide off the peel onto the stone inside the oven. If it sticks at that point, there's going to be trouble. Of note, you can buy a small countertop electric pizza oven for a few $100s with a stone bottom built in. If you have the room and want to make pizzas often, that could be a good solution. The most common form of pizza in the U.S. is the Neapolitan pizza, meaning a pizza that at its most basic is covered with tomato sauce and cheese, most often mozzarella cheese. To some, anything more is sacrilege. But for everyone else, the toppings make the pie. Starting with the tomato sauce, you can buy commercial pizza sauce or make your own with a simmered tomato sauce, oil, and spices. I prefer a more basic approach, using diced tomatoes, either canned or fresh from my garden, or diced garden tomatoes, frozen. When the latter are defrosted, they lose a lot of their water content. The flavor becomes much more intense. Tomatoes are high in fiber and low in calories. They contain the antioxidant lycopene, which helps reduce the risk of heart disease and some cancers, protects the skin from harmful effects of sun damage. I then add spinach, cooked, because of the taste, added nutrients, and numerous health benefits. You either like it or you don't. The part skim mozzarella cheese goes on. Like eggs, cheese has some good health benefits and some bad, like saturated fat and sodium, so is best eaten in moderation. Mozzarella is not the healthiest cheese, but neither is it the worst. It has lots of protein and calcium and can reduce the risk of colon cancer. Mozzarella contains some probiotics that may improve gut health and regularity, promote immunity, and decrease inflammation. You should grate your own. It's easy. When you buy a package of grated cheese, you're also getting cellulose, which keeps the pieces from sticking together. What's cellulose? Well, sawdust is cellulose. But what they seem to use is sugarcane fiber. I would rather prefer to keep my cheese, well, all cheese. I add Impossible Foods plant-based sausage. It's made from soy protein, sunflower oil, coconut oil, and some other things. I add olives, which have the same substantial benefits of olive oil, plus some fiber and other good things. Plus, they taste good. Finally, I add some bits of pineapple, which apparently for some people is sacrilege, but I like it. If you like pineapple, try getting a whole one and cutting it up yourself rather than getting it in a can. You can freeze the extra cut up bits without damage. And you can put the top in water until roots sprout and then put it in a pot to grow a new pineapple. Once the toppings are on, it's time to bake. I either bake in a pan at 400 degrees or on a stone at 500 degrees. How you bake, either way, is largely dependent on your oven, whether it's heating from the bottom or the top, or from top and bottom simultaneously, and where your rack is placed. When I cook on a stone, I leave it in the oven until the cheese just starts to brown, then take it out. The cooking time is somewhat influenced by the toppings. The pineapple especially soaks up a lot of the heat, therefore extending the baking time. If just sauce and cheese, the pie would bake in less time. Here's the pizza baked on a stone. When I use a pan, I actually use 2 deep dish perforated aluminum pans, one to cover the top of the pizza part of the time. If I just use the bottom pan, the toppings would cook before the crust, so I bake for something around 14 minutes with the top covered, then take the top pan off and bake until the cheese just starts to brown, about 24 minutes total. Your oven may give you different results. You may only need to use one pan. Here's the pizza baked in a pan. So there you have it, pan or stone. The best part is you make it yourself. The more you do it, the better you'll get. Next time, a pie, a fruit pie. And yes, this one has cranberries, but not by themselves. 3 of 6. Thanks for watching.